The purpose of vibrato is to help enhance your musicality, and on a more technical point, it's to help you get a larger volume and larger tone out of your instrument. But when it comes to intonation and tone quality, which is better, fingertip vibrato or finger pad vibrato? This is a small nuance that if you're watching this video, I think will absolutely help you in your vibrato journey. Whenever I teach vibrato, I always have a precursor to all my students that they should be playing with their fingertips. I never allow any student before they play vibrato to have finger pad placement. I highly discourage it because it'll be more difficult to do vibrato when you have finger pad placement from the get-go. However, when you understand the rules, then you can start breaking some rules. But I always recommend as a foundation to place the note on the fingertip. For example, this D here. So I always recommend to go down and oscillate, to go down like half step oscillation. And I'll give you a better view in just a moment, but you want the fingertip placed on the left side of the tip, not on the right side like this, because then your knuckles will simply be below the fingerboard and it's really hard to vibrate. So first things first, you need to have a very organized left hand. That's number one. And then you can start moving that finger back. And that's the main point of the vibrato. Now, let's say you want a juicier, beefier sound. You're playing a sonata, like Franck violin sonata. You might consider using more finger pad for the vibrato, like to get a little bit more juice. Right, and you can already tell that I'm not using a wrist vibrato, I'm using a little bit more arm vibrato to get a wider oscillation, more romantic sound. Let me try that again. In the end, it really depends on the context of what you're using the vibrato for. If you're using vibrato, for instance, for faster passages, then without a doubt, fingertip placement, making sure the fingertips, and then vibrating, because you're not vibrating for a long time. But for example, you want a juicier, beefier sound to get your sound projecting in the hall. You can tell that the sound is resonant, it's spinning. Another great example is simply doing the Brahms G major sonata from the beginning. Like, if I were to do that with a fingertip, I do get the vibrato, but the sound is simply not there. So if I do, I get more surface area with a finger pad. This is a bit of a higher intermediate / advanced level vibrato tip. And if you're not ready to do the finger pad vibrato, then absolutely don't do it without consulting with your teacher. I recommend using a fingertip and trying to do the vibrato that way on every single finger. And the way to practice this, and I've said this on the channel and I teach this with my students, is to go up to 4th position on the violin or viola for that matter, because this works on viola as well, but it's gonna be a different note. You make sure you get an A, you do fingertip. You can see how my hand is placed near the shoulder. The idea is to keep this joint relaxed, the first joint of your finger relaxed. And then you are going to move it back half an oscillation. Right? So you're obviously doing it on the fingertip, and then you do this on every single finger. Now, you could also practice this method, and you can use more of a finger pad just to kind of get an idea of what that might feel like when you do vibrate your note. You may notice that my knuckles are simply a little bit lower. This is, again, based on my height, my hands, my fingers. Every single violinist is gonna have a different hand shape, different length fingers, different width of palm. You know, everything can be really technical at this point and very detail oriented. But that's something you just practice on your own. And I wish I can just go into my student's body and like teach them how to do it in their body and then go out and then they'll know. But I wish I can do that, but I can't. But anyway, so you can do this with the fingertip more this way, which is the preferred method. It's the preferred method to do. But if you're playing sonatas, long passages with beefy sound, it could be forte or even piano, you can really try to maybe flatten out that finger, but you still, mind you, still have to keep this joint really, really relaxed and fluid. So now I'm in fifth position and I'm using my finger on the A and I'm going all the way down. Right? So then now I'm gonna try it with the finger pad. There are obviously two different scenarios here. So you can do fingertip or a finger pad. You can see how my arm is kind of out a little bit more. Versus, you know, a little bit more of a shimmer vibrato. So that's something to consider as well if you're doing a more shimmer vibrato, fingertip, or more wide oscillation vibrato, finger pad. And experiment with each different finger because the feeling is going to be different compared to third finger and first finger. Just for example, the first finger, just because the placement of the first finger, you know, the third finger is way more balanced, is way more cozy to vibrate with the third finger because it's in the middle of the hand and you have all that weight distribution evenly between the first and second finger and then the fourth finger, right? But then the first finger, that's going to be a bit of a challenge. And I find that first finger and fourth finger with students oftentimes have the most trouble. So 1, 2, 3 vibrato. But what about this pinky? We haven't really talked about the pinky vibrato. You could technically do it on the pinky tip, but I kind of change it between pinky tip and pinky pad. So if that was always your question, then you can kind of try experimenting with both. So pinky vibrato is probably the toughest one out of all 4 fingers just because you have not as much weight, not as much strength because pinky is the weakest finger, of course. But regardless, the methodology and the approach of whether or not you should choose a fingertip or finger pad still remains the same. It just depends on what piece you're playing. If you're playing something slow, then maybe you might want to consider using a more finger pad vibrato. Something faster that requires you to have a more of a shimmer vibrato, very quick and very concise. Fingertip may be your best bet. Now we did explore fingertip and finger pad vibrato, and I've also talked about fingertips and finger pad placement on the violin. But I also have an organized violin vibrato masterclass. So yeah, we dove in between vibrato, but regarding the mechanics of vibrato, I have an organized course on how you can achieve very good vibrato. So I want to give you this gift of 15% off this violin vibrato course. So all you got to do is use the code VIOLINSTART at checkout and you'll be getting your violin vibrato masterclass and you'll learn the mechanics of how to actually start your vibrato journey. I also have some other violin videos on the channel that you can check out right over here and right over here.